Yes, please. Please, the one in front. One. Yeah, please. Please give him or her the microphone. But please be seated first. What is your media outlet, ma'am? UN SDGs. Okay, one from UN SDG, one from BBC, one from CNBC. Oh, not CNBC, CNN. Please. Thank you, Minister Erlangga, Minister Sri, Minister Retno. My name is I'm from UN SDG 28494. I would like to report the potential violation of Nagoya Protocol by Japan, while the leaders of the national institutions has retired. Only questions related to G20, not the Nagoya Protocol on fair distribution and utilization of bio. This is the question directed to Ibu Retno Marsudi. President Jokowi mentioned that the most debated point was on the war between Russia and Ukraine. The question is, is Indonesia is among the members that condemned the war in Ukraine. The president has explained that the result is a declaration or a communique, which means that all, because if come document will be different, and since we need to unanimously agree on everything, the negotiation, of course, very long. There are several rounds of negotiation, and the last round of negotiation was started on the 10th of November until the 14th of November, and the affairs, so that we can agree on a declaration. When it comes to, also we mentioned that the geopolitical paragraph was the one debated the most, but it doesn't mean that other paragraphs were not also being debated. Uh, but we are actually in an advantageous position, and we managed to engage everyone one by one, and we also need Indonesia. So at the end, was pessimistic. Nobody, okay, or the declaration can be agreed by all members. This is based on trust. We are deploying our long-standing and long-built diplomacy assets, and we are always trying to bridge any differences, no matter how wide or how deep the differences is. CNN, good afternoon, Ibu Retno, Pak Erlangga, and Ibu Ani. I have several questions. First, about the leader. Paragraph 12 was on realizing the commitment in 2019 to lift fuel subsidies. I would like to ask whether this is in line with Indonesia's commitment to transition to green energy. And one question to Ibu Minister Retno: how how is the success of Indonesia G20 presidency will affect our international diplomacy power? So that's actually, we agreed to actually lift the fuel subsidy, but the technicalities on how and when will be explained by the Minister of Finance. Paragraph 12 is on the achievement of eliminating poverty that is stemmed from energy insecurity sector that produce carbon dioxide emission, including in Indonesia. If we see our NDC, the energy sector is the one that actually produce the most carbon dioxide, and also the most hard to achieve in terms of the balance to reduce the emission. But SDG 7 is about how we can close the gap between those who do not have any access to energy, or who have access to energy, and those who do not have any access to energy. And in this paragraph, we discussed about different measures that should be taken. So, for instance, low emission carbon for energy sector, and among others, we also mentioned about phasing out of fossil fuel and coal. This is actually one of the paragraph that was not easy to achieve, because in G20 we have Saudi Arabia and UAE that is rich in fossil fuel. So they ask for a more prudent phasing out and more gradual phasing out. And when we talk about transition to green energy, it is not only a matter of subsidy, but also financing to energy. So if we see, starting from 2009 in Pittsburgh, when the G20 was initiated, they have already mentioned about phasing out and rationalizing untargeted subsidies, and how we can increase access of energies, especially for the poor and marginalized, and also reducing emission from the energy sector. So that's actually something that we always have to balance. And for G20, as mentioned by the President, for energy transition mechanism, Indonesia received very strong support. We have designed the phasing out of coal sector. We received 500 million funding from Climate Investment Fund, and also from Just Energy Transition Partnership Program. 20 billion indicated fund from various sources that can be used and will be dedicated for energy transition. So this is all come in a package. Madam Foreign Minister, so in this energy transition program, the US government also launched PGII, Partnership for Global Infrastructure, and one of them is to transition to green energy. The total package is $600 billion US, and including in the package is initiative from Japan and JETP, and we have already received 20 billion fund commitment, which will help us to accelerate the decarbonization in Indonesia. So the question was how the world sees our achievement. I think let the world answer this. We should not assess or grade ourselves, but from what I see in the beginning, many or almost everyone were pessimistic. Everyone said that, oh, no leaders declaration will be produced. And in other international fora, almost all international fora, leaders declaration were not agreed. But by producing a leaders declaration that is agreed by all members of G20, this is actually something amazing. We started from differences, but we see that there are some commonalities, there are some issues in which we can cooperate in. So in the beginning of our presidency, and
Data and TVRI, and one from China. Kata data. There are many known in our foreign policies to implement principle-based policies as contained in UN Charter, and you can see the consistencies in implementing this. When we are talking about territorial integrity,
very clear, consistently.
Terkait dengan
on SDR, essentially, paragraph 33 on number 1, the ability of multilateral institutions to respond, the need for countries due to pandemic. After pandemic, there are a lot of countries implementing fiscal space, monetary space, and we have energy and food crisis, and many are not sustainable. IMF, in this case, offered a mechanism, 81.6, in which voluntarily the member of IMF can lend their SDR and contributed to become the source of other countries needing that funding. And 81.6 billion is from IMF countries, especially in the special drawing route, is equivalent to that the countries who are certain that they are not going to utilize their SDR in the near future. If I may add a little or strengthen what our Ministry of Foreign Affairs has reiterated, Ministry of Finance have 7 times or the highest frequency of meetings. And this is war in Ukraine, and after that, we are unable to reference the condition before and after the war happened. As until last week, we still have a joint finance and health meeting. So we have 8 times meetings in total, and still in a ministerial meeting. And on the paragraph on the war, we did not have an agreement. Therefore, we only had an agreement on leaders level. What does it mean? It means that during the process of negotiations that take months, the members of G20 fully respect Indonesia's position, that continuously try to bridge and continue to create momentum for cooperation. And that is one of the factors under the leadership of President Joko Widodo, limited time.
I'm from China Central Television, the Chinese media group. Thank you so much for this chance. I would like to know, because Chinese President Xi had 2 important speeches during the G20 summit, which he explained the 3 points of his global development initiative, and he also proposed the digital Silk Road this afternoon. So how do you comment on this issue, and what do you think this can benefit to the whole world? Thank you.
I think the digitalization we appreciate because that is in line with Indonesia focus on transformation of digital. And I think that's also in line with Indonesia chairmanship on ASEAN, that we target to make this detail of economic framework within a digital economic framework within an ASEAN. So I will sign an MOU with President China right now. So if you allow me to leave this room, the more faster I sign the MOU with your Minister of Commerce. Saya rasa karena sudah terbatas.
Due to the time limitation, last question from TVRI.
Silakan, mungkin langsung dari Ibu.
Jadi selain deklarasi yang kita
Aside from the declaration, if you see the document, it has some annexes, especially Annex B. Annex B is G20 Actions for Strong and Inclusive Recovery. This is a list of cooperation projects. And maybe you ask why we have that kind of annex. This is actually to fulfill the Indonesia's G20 pledge that we want to bring G161 cooperations in that strengthening cooperation, bilateral cooperation with G20 countries in 3 priority sectors, and we have 140 cooperation programs. So aside from the Bali, including tangible results. So there are 2 baskets. The first basket is trilateral, 115 projects in health sector, 34 in digital, and 35 in energy transition, and 111 in other sectors. In basket one, that includes carbon capture. TVRI, okay, we'll talk to you later in the next section.
Keluar. Ya, semua.